Thank you, Yasser, and thank you everyone for such a great discussion over the past 2 days. I've been listening and learning with so much interest, as my work is usually behind the scenes and I don't get to meet so many of you in the conferences and elsewhere. So let me start by saying that Syria is one of the most documented conflicts in modern history. And I say this with a lot of experience I've had in this and conflict starting from my own country, Bosnia, and onwards. So from the 90s, when Bosnia started, to the 2011 start of the Syrian conflict, we have not seen the level of documentation and of innovation and of collaboration where the private actors, citizens, civil society, Syrians have contributed to the actual knowledge about the crimes that they have been subjected to over the past decade. And this is really crucial because in many conflicts, we've had to wait until after those crimes were committed to actually start truly working on the collection of the evidence necessary for the criminal accountability efforts. So this is what puts Syrians and Syria on advantage, right? We already know what crimes have happened, what crimes are happening. As we've heard from COI, tens of thousands of witness testimonies have been taken. SNHR, Fadel was here yesterday, has been working in this area, Syrian Lawyers Association as well, and as many others in this room and not in this room, have been collecting the evidence about the crimes. What we've learned in the courtrooms since Bosnia and onwards is what is that crucial piece of evidence that needs to connect these crimes to those who are responsible, not to the perpetrator who holds the gun, not the one who does the torture, but to collect those crimes to the individuals who are hundreds of kilometers away for the crime scenes, people like Bashar al-Assad, and the leadership, let's say, of the security apparatus that hoovered up the protesters into the detention centers and disappeared them and tortured them, killed them. And for that, we need linkage evidence. This is what we've learned, as I say, in Yugoslav tribunal, in the Rwanda tribunal, in a lot of judicial architecture in The Hague that we have walked through. And this is the information that comes usually through the documents. It comes through the perpetrator's own words, if you will, or writing in this case. So this is what CIJA, my organization, has focused on since 2011, collecting the documents that allows us to fill the gaps in this puzzle that the civil society and international community have built since the beginning. So 10 years later, and we were not meant to be here for 10 years, we were only meant to do this for 2 years and hand it over to the ICC, which back then was the discussion of a referral of the Syrian situation to the ICC. So the idea was collect now so that they can start with the advantage of having the evidence and just drawing up the indictments when they're ready. But of course, the political developments were such that they didn't allow for this to happen. So since then, CIJA has, and when I say CIJA, I mean the men and women who are Syrians who work on our Syrian teams still inside Syria, collected over 1.3 million of documents. Majority of this is the Syrian regime documentation produced by the security apparatus, different security intelligence agencies, but also, popular committees that turned into national defense forces, some Syrian Arab army, documentation, etc. Documents that are so crucial in current and future cases, but also in a wider question that the wider transitional justice effort of the Syrians has to deal with. Because these documents don't only tell the story of how these crimes were masterminded from the top down, but also the stories of the many disappeared and the many activists who were wanted and arrested and whose names go through these documents. So the problem we had was not that we couldn't find the evidence, but what could we do with it? Because obviously in 2014, 2015, it became clear that the ICC is not something that is going to happen. And we often hear in these Geneva conferences that this is because of the Russians and the Chinese, but the actual truth is that even the Western governments really didn't push enough for this. So the ICC referral didn't happen. But even by 2015, the crimes we've seen in Syria have been of such heinous nature to such a level that the ICC could have never done it justice. So we've seen maybe just a little effort to talk about establishment of a special court dedicated to Syria, whether it's international or hybrid at any level, but there was no appetite to discuss this. There was no appetite at the international level to see something like this added to the judicial architecture. And it's not necessarily only because they didn't care or because they failed Syria so badly, but also because of the bad experiences they have had with previous conflicts. So we remained with these documents and unable to do anything with them. And that's when in 2015, we started talking to the European law enforcement, trying to involve them in actually arresting some of the individuals who have penetrated refugee floors as perpetrators, pretending to be victims, and trying to get them to act on this evidence and arrest them. But again, this is a very slow and painful process. Again, the international community was short-sighted. I remember very well conversations in 2015 when, as we are NGO, our donors said, well, you can't use the evidence and the people to help European courts because it's not helping Syrians. Like, but that's the only place in which the Syrians can go and present that evidence at the moment. So it took a year or so to actually get that support. Of course, today we are seeing a completely different picture, but I want to draw attention to how long these efforts take place. We've seen and we've heard some of those cases mentioned now. We've seen only a couple, unfortunately, of the regime officials put on trial. Majority of the cases we've had are either Daesh or opposition, armed opposition cases. So other than Raslan trial in Koblenz and now the Dr. Allah in Frankfurt, we haven't seen the Syrian officials. And Raslan, you know, he's a low, medium ranking individual at the colonel level. But even that case, I can say we started working with the Germans in 2016, 2017 on that case. It was only 2019 that the arrest and the court case started, and it was only in 2022 that the judgment was issued. So even when you have resolved the problem of, well, where are my perpetrators that I need to put on trial? So you find Raslan, it still takes 5-6 years. And then you have the opposite, where we actually had a higher ranking individual, Brigadier General Khalid al-Halabi, who was head of General Intelligence Department in Raqqa until the Daesh took over in 2013. And we found him in Austria. And we told them in January 2016, here is the evidence, and he's there. And where are we now? At the end of 2022, and al-Halabi was not arrested. And in fact, what the Austrians did, when we came and told them, they actually sent their spies to look for our headquarters, because our headquarters are secret because of the information that we hold. So it shows, you know, that even in Europe, where we talk a lot about international community and how they act with this, at least on the Western side, with one voice, there isn't. There's a lot of division and short-sightedness. There's politics, And of course, there is a slowness. I think from the law enforcement perspective, and I'll speed up here now, we are cooperating with 15 countries in Europe and supporting the prosecution efforts. And there's a lot going on in the background, but it's slow and they don't have resources. They are small. Most of these war crimes units are still dealing with the cases from Bosnia as well as Syria. It's only Germany, I think maybe one or two other countries that actually have people dedicated to the Syrian question in their war crimes units. And this slows down that effort. And even if that worked, it's not enough. It's not enough because accountability really is not on the agenda anymore of discussions. I am not involved in day-to-day political discussions or negotiations, etc. But I have not seen voices raised clearly and loudly regarding the need for justice, the need for accountability, the need for leadership to be held responsible for those crimes for many years now. Maybe in the first 2 years or 3 years, yes, Bashar al-Assad has to answer for what he has done. Who says that now, really? And we've heard, I believe, some of the speakers yesterday talking about European diplomats telling her, well, you know, we have to give Bashar a chance because what else is there left for us to do? So these are the questions, and I speak as a Bosnian, right, as somebody who's lived through a war. These are the questions that cannot be allowed to remain unanswered. So I think what is lacking and what we need to hear is, you know, the more demand for justice, because that architecture for this evidence that has been collected by so many different actors needs to be put in place so that these trials take place, so that these individuals are held accountable, because the evidence is there. I've worked in many, many conflicts and with people much more well-known and well-rounded than me in this area. And I have never seen a war better documented than this one. We know and we can prove who did what, but we just need that place to do so. When I say we, I mean we, all of us. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا نيرما.